Good morning. Happy January 2022. Welcome. I'm Mary Winters, a gerontologist, the owner of About Senior Solutions, and you are watching Visionary Aging. We're here to talk about the power that you have to control your future and the plans that are important to make so that you have control of what you want as you age. And we want you to age stupendously. We plan our weddings, our vacations, and all kinds of things, birthday celebrations. I think we should definitely give ourselves the opportunity to plan how we want to live our whole lives. So let's make sure that we make our aging years the best too. So today we have a great caregiver question. We have a caregiver question with a real kind of tough patriarch the family's trying to deal with. And so I know we'll talk with Steve about that today. And we also have Melinda Hughes on with us, and she's going to give us some fantastic insights about inflammation and protecting our body against that. And we also have Alfredo Mejia, who is a commercial real estate expert, and he is going to give us some great information on how to transfer that wealth in 3 easy steps, because there's some major pitfalls you want to make sure that you're avoiding. And so Alfredo is going to go ahead and make sure that we are safe in that process. I'm going to go ahead and find our little intro for our friend Steve, if I can find it. I see myself on here about 1 million times copied. It's very strange. So I don't know what's going on with this program today. It is Mercury retrograde, though, so we'll see how things go. Already going a little crazy, so here we go. Hey, Steve, how are you this morning? Oh, I've still got you muted. My famous mute button that I forget to unmute. The control that I have. Yeah.
How are you?
So I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Fantastic. So tell us. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, just trying to get back in the swing of 2022 after a great parade and a great Rose Bowl game.
Yeah,
which you were a big part of that. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So we have a difficult situation from a question that you have.
We do. Not difficult for you, but
so it's still difficult for me.
So it's a very strong-willed patriarch, like you mentioned, a dad who is very successful in his business. And lately his kids have noticed that some of his comments and some of his decisions are questionable. And they're worried about his health, and they're worried about his judgment, and they're trying to figure out how to have that conversation with him.
Well, sometimes those guys don't go down easy, and they consider any kind of loss of control going down, and they're not going to allow that. So sometimes allowing them to be introduced to a trusted advisor who they can work through as their confidant to share some of the concerns that they have for themselves. Sometimes somebody may lack that kind of insight, or they have a personality with, let's just say, a giant ego that will somewhat prevent that from happening. So I think the biggest thing is to safeguard and protect the assets that he has set up without trying to diminish who he is. It's a long process, and it's something that usually they kind of can tell us happening, but there's so many controls in place with that individual staying in charge. So maybe those are things that, as a family, if you have a family business, you want to talk about those things, incapacities, prior to having any kind of issues, so that especially the patriarch can go to someone else and have that confidential conversation about allowing some of their responsibility to transfer to somebody else. But I will tell you, it's a very individualized situation, and it's something that is very frustrating for families who can see what's happening and trying to prevent that explosion of difficulty that takes place in their family business. But I think it's conversations that you should have prior to anybody being sick. But when it's happening, I would say, feel free to call our office. We'll have a conversation and see what kind of direction or support would best support the situation, because that I've had those situations many, many times, and they are very, very challenging and quite a process to get through. But we do get through it. So,
right. Excellent.
Yeah.
Good advice.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, we're having Alfredo Mejia come on. He'll be on just after. And he works with us all the time in real estate. He's a commercial real estate broker. And so he sees this transfer of wealth routinely, and some of the things that really go sideways, just some really basic things that people should really know. So I'm going to go ahead and bring him on now, and I'll talk to you at the very end. How's that?
Sounds good. Have a great show.
All right. Thanks. And let's go ahead and I'll bring on our special guest, Alfredo Mejia. And he is a specialist he's one of the owners of Seba Realtors. And Alfredo, I'm going to unmute you so you can talk. How are you today?
I'm doing real well. Thank you, Mary. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because I know you started off in a family business. I don't know if you had those same kind of problems we kind of mentioned with the patriarch in the family having some declines, and the control is still, that desire to still run things is still there. But you see it a lot, I'm sure, with your families as well, right?
Yes, that's the one thing. As a young person in a family business, you really don't give a lot of thought to any of this. And as you get to a certain age, you start to see a lot of this going on and what it can do to a family. The change, when you lose somebody in the family, especially a patriarch, it puts everything into turmoil. So, the thought process has to be way ahead of that event where you can start putting all the pieces in place. Because once the patriarch passes, it just becomes hard to manage.
Even crazier. So in regards to real estate, and you deal primarily with commercial, more like warehouse, and tell me more specifically some of the things are your focus.
Yeah, so we do a lot of industrial properties. That's our main focus. And I'm one of the owners of Seba Real Estate. We have other people in the office that deal with commercial, retail, what have you, but I specialize in the industrial side of the market. And it's an amazing market right now. It's just we've never seen the prices we're seeing right now.
Of course, yeah.
So it's really interesting. But I think coming back to what we're talking about, when you have changes, you really have to listen to the family and try to figure out what's going on, what's maybe not me deciding what's best for them, but having maybe a fiduciary, because obviously they'll probably have a trust, and we're going to have to follow the trust and go through those motions. But understanding, do they want like money now? Do they need income over the long term, or a mix of both? And that's the most important thing. I think that sometimes you need a valuation on all these properties, and that's number one. Yeah, number one is understanding the family.
Great.
Then number two, you value what do they have? How do you and what are the best assets if you want to keep some? And what are the changes in the market? I mean, do they have an industrial property where they're trying to build residential? So sometimes families don't understand what they have, and that's where they have to speak to somebody to understand. It's like if you have a plot of land and you don't know there's oil underneath there.
Mm,
Well, you don't understand what the value is. So
right.
that's where we come into play. We try to help them understand what it is they have. And then at the end, it's like, what do they want to do? And is it the right time? Should they wait to sell? Should they do it now? I mean, there's so many things that go into this whole
Sure.
thought process.
Sure. And I think it would probably kind of depend on what their own personal situation is. I'm going to throw up this little diagram. I think it's probably not that different than what we do, where you look at what somebody's wishes are and then what's going to keep their family wealth safe. But, for me personally, we're looking at an older person typically. And so what's going to keep your real estate safe too, but what's going to keep my person safe and not falling? And then what can they afford? What do they need? So it sounds like just very similar to what you're sharing. It's still, what does that family need as far as to live off of? Or can you let it ride? Do they need something for their own care? Or is it something that they need to sustain their monthly expenses and so forth? So sounds like this diagram really works for kind of all situations in a way.
It does. I'm looking at it and, wishes. It's like listening to the family. What are the wishes? What do they need? What do they want as the ultimate outcome? And the safety is being able to understand what it is they have and speak to somebody so they feel better about their decision, because everybody's afraid to do something because they don't know what they're doing, and they need to speak to somebody that may understand it a little better than they do.
Yeah.
And make them more comfortable. And then the finances, what do they want in the end? Do they need money now? Can they have the income? So yeah, this diagram really is great for what we're talking about.
Yeah. And I like the arrow too, because it changes. Everything changes over time, right? So what you need today may not be what you need tomorrow. So it's something that is constantly in flux and flow, and we just need to be aware of that. Yeah. So tell me about kind of a challenging situation and something that you kind of worked through with the family in regards to kind of changing their trajectory where it could have been really disastrous, or making sure that mom or dad, whoever it was, maybe that spouse who really needed that additional support after somebody's passing.
Yeah, I think, right now we're in the middle of something and we're trying to, the father is not maybe doing so well, and we're trying to help them out and figure out what the value of their property is. And the father's still with us. So it's not that he's gone, but they're trying to figure it out now because there's other family members involved, and that's where it gets messy. You're trying to figure out who wants what, and everybody's got a different position in life. Somebody may be doing well and the other person may not be doing well. They need more money now. So what are the tax implications of selling today as opposed to selling after the event?
Sure.
There's so many things involved, and that's what we're dealing with right now.
And you must see family members too who are either peripherally involved but think that they have some kind of entitlement or ownership of something that they don't. I'm sure even as you go on with generations, you may have the adult children's spouse who's kind of maybe an alpha male, or just kind of entitled, or even a female who just thinks that they should be able to ride off of whatever.
Yes.
So you must look at kind of who has ownership, who's part of that business, who's working, who's not working in that business, to kind of come to some determinations as well, I would imagine.
I absolutely. It's been an issue, and what we find is that, the parents know their kids very well.
Yeah.
And the parents really need to make decisions for the kids before the kids get into this argument that could really create long-lasting personal rivalries between them. And not that they're not already there, but the parents need to think ahead and maybe appoint a professional fiduciary or a management company and put that in their trust so that the kids understand what's going to happen. And they can argue against a professional fiduciary together instead of arguing against each other, which nobody wants. I mean, there's the money isn't worth the family relationships, and money always seems to sneak in there.
It's true.
So,
It's really true. And so I think if mom and dad are thinking in advance and really organizing who should be in charge, and like you said, we know our kids, right?
yes,
We know what they're capable of. We know their strengths. We know their weaknesses. They know ours too, unfortunately.
they know how to
Most of the
push the
time.
buttons.
They do. They do. But I think looking at all of those things, it's even, if somebody doesn't own much in the way of real estate, but they have enough to have somebody take care of them, one of their, maybe they have 3, 4 children, I don't know, but they elect somebody to take care of them, or they name them in their documents. And I always say it's like giving away your golden ticket. Remember Willy Wonka?
Oh yeah,
And Willy Wonka, and he had his, I've got a golden ticket, and you are giving that person your golden ticket to Willy Wonka to care for you, to take care of your real estate, to make sure it's the best decision for your whole family moving forward. So it really does take some foresight and planning and deciding what is the right thing, the best thing for our family. But I think it's also interesting too, because so many parents kind of let the bus run over them, so to speak, because they want to take care of their kids before they think about taking care of themselves too. Do you see that very often?
yes, yes. We see a bit of that, but I think the most, and we don't get so personally involved. So we're seeing, the peripheral, the arguments, this and that. We see the parents trying to get the kids set up, but we don't see a lot of the. I mean, we hear a lot of it, but we don't.
Yeah.
But I guess what we've talked about before in the past, I think it's really important to set up those boundaries. And like you said, don't give away that golden ticket. Don't hold it over their heads either, because that just creates more animosity.
Sure.
But let them understand where they stand, what their position is, because if you don't, all it does is create more and more animosity. And the other thing is having sort of third parties come in and talk to everybody about what the future may be. Mary, I got into this real estate because my parents were going to trade some properties with their brothers and sisters. They had all owned them as a partnership. And I thought, wow, what a great opportunity for me, because I'm going to be this real estate mogul, because I'm going to do all these transactions. Well, it didn't turn out that way, but I got into real estate because of family issues. And so looking back now, I think, one of the best moves I ever made, because I really love this business. But now, as you get older, you start to see all these things, because when you're a kid, you don't see all these, arguments about money and all this, because you're doing your thing and you're not really worried about this so much. But now, as you age and you start seeing all these things, it's eye-opening, and you need professionals to help steer you in the right direction. When I say that, I'm talking about people like you, Mary. I'm talking about attorneys, fiduciaries,
Sure. Yeah,
because you need that advice, because otherwise, we've never been through it before.
Right.
And there's no do-overs. You got to do it right. Otherwise, you get in a bad position, and it's hard to recover.
Right. Or it's hard to undo things if, depending on what you've done. Yeah, definitely. And there are tax consequences and all kinds of interesting things. We're talking with Alfredo Mejia, one of the owners of Seba Real Estate, and he is giving us his top tips on how to manage that family estate and what to do with that wealth transfer with real estate, and make sure that we're doing the right thing. So, Alfredo, tell me again, what are those top 3 things that people really need to make sure that they're kind of focused on when they're looking at that transfer of real estate, or that whole picture of real estate for their family?
Well, I think once again, it's going to be listening to what the family needs, and really analyzing the family position. Who's going to need what in the future, who's doing well, who's not doing so well. Understanding that, because if you're transferring wealth, maybe you need to transfer some properties and say, hey, look, he needs cash today, he doesn't need cash today, and figuring out how to do that. What's the best way of doing that? And then you need to value what you have. You need to figure out, what is it that I have? Because I've seen people that have leased a property to somebody for years and years, and they don't raise the rent because they're
Yeah.
friends, and all of a sudden that creates a problem in itself because it really lowers the value of that property. If you don't have it at market lease rates, that really impacts that property. So you need to have an analysis of what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, which leads into the third thing is timing. When are you going to do this? Are you going to do a transfer before any significant event that changes the leadership or family, or are you going to do it after? Are you going to wait for the benefit of having a stepped up basis in your property? So these are things you need to talk to a
Sure.
CPA and an attorney about. So, I'm just part of the puzzle. I'm one of the
Yeah.
pieces, and we can help you with the valuation. We can help you with understanding what it is you have.
Okay.
And we're going to listen to what you need so we can give you a better picture of what we would advise. But the third component that we would say is speak to somebody, a professional, a CPA, an attorney, so that it confirms what we're telling you, but
Yeah.
also it helps you with that tax planning because
Sure.
that is so important.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And I don't know the difference with commercial property regarding versus your personal home in regards to how that works out to selling things prior to somebody passing. And but I know there are tax consequences with some of those items too. And I assume that's the same with commercial real estate, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, it's a little bit different.
Yeah,
I
see.
think we had Prop 58, which gave a transfer of a property between parents and their children, and I believe it's a principal residence and maybe some
Mhm.
residential, and it passes. And don't quote me on that because again, I'm not an attorney, but I know
Sure.
that you can pass the property and there's no stepped up basis.
Mhm.
Whereas commercial properties, I'm not sure if you can do that. And but when somebody passes, you get the stepped up basis. So your tax rate's going to go up, property tax rate's going to go up, but you're not going to get, if you sell the property, there is no capital gain, which is a tremendous advantage.
Mhm.
So, there's different options, and that's why you need to really talk to a CPA or an attorney.
Nice. Well, thank you. How do people get a hold of you, Alfredo Mejia of Seba Real Estate?
Yeah, well, Ciba Real Estate. My name's Alfredo Mejia, and it's Alfredo at cibare.com. And my phone number is 626-841-0599. Call me, not anytime, but call me.
I had somebody else give their cell phone number out. I was like, "Are you sure you want to give their cell phone?" He's like, "Yep,
Yeah,
I do."
yeah. The
So
cell
it
phone
sounds
is
great.
available for everybody.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. And
Ma-
reach out if you have any questions. Yeah,
Yeah, Mary, it's always great to see you. I mean, we've known each
you
other for
too.
many years, and it's
Yeah.
tremendous to see how well you've done, and I
Well,
really
thank you.
appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate your knowledge, and it takes a village. We all have so much learning to do, and we can't be experts in everything. So that's why it's so
Right.
important for me to have experts come on and share this really valuable information with our families. So thanks a lot. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Mary. You take care.
Okay, thanks. Let's go ahead and bring Melinda Hughes on. We'll talk about something really fantastic with her. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. Wow, what an
Great.
interesting guest. That was really
Very
fascinating.
interesting. Yeah, no, he really knows his stuff. And like I
Mhm.
said, he was part of a family restaurant for years. And that's where he even realizes, well, if I'm not an owner in the business and I'm, family, so I want to be part of it, I want to support the business, but I'm not,
Yeah.
one foot in, but not two. Should I be doing this, or maybe I should be doing something else to help the family? So he developed his business with some other partners, and He's just wonderful. I think he's just a trusted advisor you can go to and find out if it's the right fit to sell or not sell or trade or, do your exchanges. Yeah.
A lot of decisions.
Yeah. And it's different than residential too. So
yeah. As he was speaking, we're watching Succession right now.
So are we.
It's such a good show.
It's a great show, and man, it's cutthroat. I don't think any one of those family members have a redeeming quality about them. It's all about just the business.
No, but also like the decisions that go into a business that size, you're just like, oh God.
Well, I think the other thing that I found interesting was they tried to show that the dad was a little wonky and he wasn't capable of managing the business anymore because he had a urinary tract infection, which honestly can happen. You can be, you can go a little sideways sometimes with an infection or some other physical things with medications or whatever.
Yeah.
But I found it really interesting that they use that in Succession as an option to try to get dad out of office.
Well, it also was, it was the interesting point about that is it was kind of difficult to tell whether they just wanted to get him out or if they really doubted his, really doubted his.
He was a little off kilter for sure. Yeah. He was a little off from the way they showed him, and that's true. That can happen, but you can also fix it. So that's a good thing. So let's talk a little bit about inflammation, just like infection. Let's talk about inflammation and how that affects our bodies too.
Yeah, there's a new test that I've ordered to be a little guinea pig on myself. I just attended a summit talking about longevity and increasing health span. And one of this test, so I guess to rewind, a lot of the markers for determining how quickly our bodies are aging are, number one, the length of our telomeres, DNA methylation, which just means the changes that occur to our DNA over time, and then our blood pressure and blood glucose levels. But what's fascinating is they're doing more research on different types of markers that are a lot easier to measure. So in order for us, obviously blood pressure and blood glucose levels are easier to measure, and we use those a lot in the health, and health and wellness. But DNA methylation and the length of our telomeres of our cells are a lot harder for us to measure. It's not very easy. And when you do take a chunk of cells, you're only getting a very small sample of those particular cells of the body when you're testing for the length of the telomeres. One of the tests that's new coming out that I'm exploring is testing glycans. And I guess, and I don't know very much about this at this stage, but there are these are substances that either create inflammation in our body or prevent inflammation in the body. Oh. And when we're children, we have a lot of inflammatory the glycans, and that's why children have large immune responses to things. And then as we become childbearing, and in those childbearing years, we produce or have more anti-inflammatory glycans. As we go through menopause or, as we get older, there's a slow decline for men. There's a huge drop off extreme for women through menopause. We lose the anti-inflammatory glycans, and our body starts to create and support more pro-inflammatory. So there's a test out now that tests your level of glycans, which is basically testing the inflammation in your body to see how rapidly your body is aging.
Interesting. That's really great.
This can be, whether we're talking about the length of our telomeres or the changes in our DNA, or what our blood pressure is, or our glucose levels in the blood, or we're talking about these newer markers like glycans, and whether they're inflammatory or anti-inflammatory. All of these things are affected by the choices that we make, how we're living our lives. So whether we're getting enough sleep, whether we're living a stressful lifestyle, whether we're eating a healthy diet. And one of the things that the scientist was talking about in this summit, who does the testing with glycans and inflammation in the body, was very firm that there is no scientific evidence that one diet works for everybody. It's
I'm sure. Yeah.
it's really just what works for that person, because one way of eating will cause inflammation for one person, but not for another, and vice versa.
And the other thing that's interesting about that too is, as we talked about, you eat the same thing over and over again, your body tends to kind of repel a little bit sometimes.
Yes.
So sometimes even the same diet that we enjoy like maybe premenopausal is not the same diet we should be enjoying, or just mixing some things up.
Yes, absolutely. I was just talking to a client yesterday about this. They took this person took our the allergy test that we recommend, the allergy food sensitivity test that we recommend at the Strength Shop. And so we were just talking about, I showed the difference between foods that show up on the test because we're eating them with too much regularity. And one of the points that I made to this client was, anything creates inflammation in the body. Inflammation is kind of your body's response to anything. So any food that you're eating, anything that we're doing is creating some type of inflammation. It's just that how extreme is it? So everybody is carrying around inflammation. It's just that how much are we carrying around?
Sure. We also have a CRP test rather, so we can check more inflammation in regards to our heart. And so that's also a great test that many cardiologists are using now too, because it's not just about blood pressure and what your cholesterol is. We do want to know what that inflammation level is as well. I'm going to bring Stephen with us and see if he has any little interesting comments to add before we take off for our weekend.
Yeah, the level of inflammation in our bodies, and it's from what they were talking about in this summit, that it's the low grade kind of constant inflammation is what we want to reduce. Like obviously, if we if we have a virus or something big is a major event in the body, that's causing a lot of inflammation, but then usually your body will recover from that. But it's that constant low grade inflammation caused by our everyday choices that we want to minimize.
Sure.
One of the other great things that both you and Steve will be interested is the scientist in the summit said that people who do workouts like CrossFit, or a lot of the personal trainers that have taken their tests, have very high biological ages. They have a lot of inflammation because they're working out too hard and too often. And
interesting.
He made the point of like, we need to find the right balance between working out intensely and then having lots of rest and recovery time. And I was like,
the strength shop.
Yeah.
Can I blow that up and put it on my website?
Yeah, please.
For you. Right. It's perfect.
We ordered a test, and I'm going to be the little guinea pig because I'm very curious. But it might be something that I might contact the scientist who's in charge of these tests, the guy behind all the research, and just kind of say like, hey, I would be really interested in finding out if our workout is
yes, I'll volunteer. Right. To take the test. Yeah. See if we can do a little study. That would be fantastic. Yeah. Well, do you think it'll be, do you think your test will be done next week? Will it be complete?
No, because I don't even have the test yet. And then I think they say it'll be several weeks. So we'll have to revisit it. And I have to tell you, I'm a little frightened because,
what if it's not? You've already said.
I'm 41 years old, but I'm like, oh my God, what if my test comes back that I'm really 55 or
right, exactly.
I have a reputation to uphold. I better be younger then.
Exactly. That's so funny. Yeah, that's great. Well, let's keep talking about that.
Yeah.
I think we want to get some more information. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we always have our birthday that we talk about. And quite frankly, nothing was being reported on anybody turning 100 other than talking about Betty White and how distressed everybody was about that. So people were talking about how to honor her by either watching one of her movies or donating to one of her causes for animals. So it was absolutely pages and pages of Google search that just when you searched 100th birthday, it was only Betty White. So
We
I'm
were
so
drowning in Betty
sorry.
White celebrations.
They raised tens of thousands of dollars for the zoo, right? In her
That's
name.
fantastic and
Oh,
so
that's
important.
wonderful.
So that's fantastic. Yeah. So we miss her. I'll put these wonderful little pictures up of her really quick, and you could see from earlier days that she's always loved animals, and so pretty. It's so interesting how you see somebody age over time, and she really maintained her beauty and her inner loveliness with her fun nature and so forth her whole life. So we do miss her, and we're so glad that people are donating to her causes.
I didn't realize she was the oldest of all the actresses on the Golden Girls. She was the oldest.
Really?
And the only one, the last surviving Golden Girl. Absolutely. Yeah. So I think we're going to go ahead and take off.
But the people that were there, though, she was the oldest in age too, though. Whenever he was, not just the longest surviving one, she was the oldest person on that.
She was the oldest surviving and the oldest. Yeah. And I think the one that played the mother, the older grandmother role, she was the youngest. She was the youngest of all the Golden Girls in actuality. So we miss her, and I'm glad people are donating to her causes. But let's go ahead and take off for the weekend. You guys have a great time, and we'll find out more about inflammation and how well we're doing in the very near future.
Vanilla Bar Day.
Oh, Vanilla Bar Day? Sounds good. Oh, granola bar. All right. Okay. Get those granola bars out. And you can reach out to our office over at 626-359-0108. How's that? And you can get a copy of the perk, and it'll give you all the funny things that happen all during the month. So thanks, Steve, for mentioning that. I appreciate that. So we'll go ahead and we'll say goodbye, and thank you so much.